let me start with some housekeeping. Make sure that you are picking up our podcast. It's now being downloaded in 124 countries around the world. It's not yet back to the numbers it was when we had to close it down for financial reasons, but we are determined that it will be. Take note that on Monday, the 7th of November, the mother of all talk shows goes on the road. The mother of all road shows begins in Stockport in the Garrick Theatre on Monday, the 7th of November. Gayatri will have her camera. We'll be interviewing members of the audience. We'll be showing some of those interviews on the subsequent edition of The Moats. Take note that we plan to restart the midweek mother of all talk shows, financial circumstances permitting, on the 12th of October. Put that in your diary. And note that every Wednesday until then, the Galloway show. Just me and Gayatri and one camera. No frills, but raw and unvarnished. The Galloway show only on YouTube at 10 p.m. UK time on Wednesday evenings. It's racking up great number, six-figure number last week and growing. It will grow until Wednesday at least of this week. I mention little Macron because he was in Algeria for a reason. Not to commemorate the massacre of more than 100 Algerian citizens in France who were thrown in the river Seine when the Beatles were number one in the British hit parade. I'm not talking ancient history here, because they were protesting against the brutal occupation of their country, Algeria, by the French colonists. I'm not talking about the million martyrs that the Algerian people gave in their world historic, heroic struggle to overthrow French colonialism in their country. That's not why Macron was there. Macron was in Algeria to beg Algeria, which produces 3% of the world's natural gas, to sell some of it to France rather than on the open market. Macron was chased out of Algiers by the Algerian masses, who made my heart swell with pride. Vive Algerie! What a magnificent sight, this little two-bit, moth-eaten, dwarfish emperor chased out of an Arab capital. Would that all the Arab people had the spirit of the Algerian revolutionary people. They chased him, and the police had to hustle him into his car to escape from the angry masses in Algiers. I take my hat off again, as I have done all of my adult life, to the people of Algeria. He was trying to get gas from Algeria for the same reason that the French Foreign Legion has now invaded Yemen. I'm not making that up, though you almost certainly don't know it, because it has had virtually no coverage in the mainstream media. The French Foreign Legion, that's right, beau geste and all of that. The people that were driven out of Algeria 60 years ago are now invading Yemen. Why? Because they want to help the starving Yemeni children? No, because they want to occupy a potential gas field in the eastern part of Yemen and use it to bolster the gas supply to France and to the European Union. Boy, they're getting desperate now. The Yemeni people will resist them. The French Foreign Legion will be chased out of Yemen like the British were chased out of Yemen, like the French Foreign Legion were chased out of Algeria. The days of white European colonies are over. It's Mandela's anniversary. He went on trial and was sent to prison for 27 years with the full support of British, American, and French white European colonist governments, right up until 2008, when the United States removed the terrorist label from Nelson Mandela. And then they all queued up to deify him. They all queued up for selfies with him. They were even taking selfies at Nelson Mandela's funeral, the hypocrites. But some of us have got long memories. I am like an elephant. I am cursed with long memories. I am cursed with the memory of being called a communist because I supported Nelson Mandela. The days of white European colonialism are dead and buried, and the sooner white European countries realize it, the better. The only way to sort out your gas supply is to make peace with Russia. And that means to end your economic aggression against Russia and your endless military supply of weaponry to Ukraine. Don't take my word for that. Take the word of Lord Richard Dannett, the former Commander-in-Chief of the British Army, writing in the Times of all places this very day. This is awkward because the Times has been telling its readers for the last 6 months that Kiev was winning the war, and bigly, and their hero, Boris Johnson, was in Kiev. Where else would he be? He wouldn't be on the beach at Dover trying to repel the 1,652 boarders coming across in rubber dinghies every single day last week. No, he wouldn't be in Rotherham. He wouldn't be in any of those towns where our young girls have been so grievously sexually abused systematically for decades, with the police and the politicians doing nothing about it. Of course not. He wouldn't be on the old age pensioner estates in Britain explaining to them how they're going to live when 3/4 of their weekly old age pension is going to be spent on their gas and electricity bills this winter. Where else would he be? Of course, he's in Kiev telling Zelensky not to negotiate with Russia, to keep the war going, to fight to the last drop of Ukrainian blood. This is awkward for the Times, that the former head of the British Army says it's time to end the war. It's time to negotiate with Russia. It's time for the generals to tell Zelensky that they can do no more. It's awkward. This is not Galloway telling you this on the mother of all talk shows. This is the former head of the British Army telling you in the Times today. The game's up. And no matter how much money, weapons, and propaganda we continue to spew out of the pockets of our own taxpayers into the treasury of Zelensky, some of it, of course, ending up offshore, that will not change the final outcome. Although the final shape of a settlement has changed with every single day of the war. I want to tell you something that, again, you probably haven't thought of. You keep hearing the word billions. You keep hearing the word billionaire. And many people have begun to think of a billion as they once thought of a million. Well, let me tell you something. 1 million seconds is 12 days. 1 billion seconds is 32 years. That's the difference between a million and a billion. I want you to get those numbers in your head. 1 million seconds is 12 days. 1 billion seconds is 32 years. And then I want you to count up. How many billions of US taxpayer, European taxpayer, British taxpayer has been sent to Ukraine? I'll tell you how many. That's 78 billion has been sent to Ukraine to make war against Russia. 78 billion. Now remember, a billion seconds is 32 years. That's what you have spent. Our economy has been destroyed by our own leaders who, on the back of the COVID catastrophe, the lockdown debacle, disaster, have now spent a fortune of your money that they didn't even have. They printed the money and bankrupted your economy in order to make war against Russia, when they could have solved this entire matter by merely implementing the Minsk II agreements, which they signed and guaranteed. France and Germany are the guarantors of the Minsk II agreement. What did the Minsk II agreement require? It required a declaration that Ukraine would not join NATO and that Lugansk and Donetsk would have devolved government like Wales or Scotland. That's all. But of course, so much blood and treasure and bad blood and international political poison is now coursing through the veins of this entire matter, that the terms of a settlement have dramatically changed. But Lord Dannatt is insistent they will have to be negotiated and agreed. Someone asked me in good faith today on Twitter if I would set out what I thought were now the terms of a political settlement. He's not going to like what I'm going to say. And many of you won't like it. And it might not even be accurate. But my take now is that Russia will now absorb the eastern half of Ukraine, the southern coast of Ukraine, and will require a new government in Kiev. They will insist on the southern coastal plain of the Ukraine linking up with Transnistria and the hundreds of thousands of Russian people living there under threat from Ukraine on one side and Moldova on the other side. Sheriff is their football team. They're playing Manchester United in the Europa League very soon. Look out for them. They've got a statue of Lenin outside their stadium. That will leave Western Ukraine as a landlocked NATO protectorate, exactly like the NATO protectorate in what they call Kosovo, which is in fact the NATO-occupied part of Serbia. It will be an endless source for you of bills of crime, of prostitution, of people trafficking, of illegal weapons. And by the way, the Pentagon has just launched an inquiry this day into the failure of the Ukrainian regime to properly track the billions of dollars, 32 years of seconds, billions of dollars of military hardware sent to Ukraine by Western countries, and the tracking, according to the Pentagon, which is now investigating it, has been so insufficient that anyone who knows the way to the dark web can today buy a Javelin missile to put in the boot of their car for just $23,000. It was $25,000, it's now $23,000 for a Javelin. You can bring down an airliner with a Javelin. You can blow up a bank vault with a Javelin. You can cause devastation by terrorist attack on any target, anywhere in the world, with a Javelin in your boot, $23,000. The whole kit and caboodle. So not only did the so-called Western taxpayer pay for the weapon in the first place, criminals and terrorists are buying it to use against Western targets right now. Again, don't believe me believe the Pentagon, which has just launched an inquiry into it. So that's what I think will be the terms of the ending of the war. But if these terms are not agreed, the war will go on. And something like the final lines which I have just drawn for you, or worse, will be the outcome for Kiev and for Western Ukraine, as it will come to be known. So, given that this war has cost the lives of uncountable Ukrainians, the blood of their soldiers is running like rivers everywhere in the country. Lord Dannett says they've comprehensively lost the war and can do no other. And given that it has devastated, bankrupted your economy, isn't it time to end the endless media lies that Ukraine is winning? One more heave, 1 more billion, 10 more billions into the maw will do it. Boris Johnson is more welcome in Kiev than he would be in Dover. More welcome in Kiev than he would be in Hare Hills in Leeds, where the gangs are fighting each other with machetes on the streets in broad daylight with not a police officer in sight. Mind you, if they were, they'd be wearing new hats specially designed for non-binary police officers, like the pictures of the Northern Ireland Police Service that I have just seen today. It warmed the cockles of my heart. I remembered the RUC over so many decades of my life, and I thought of them now in their non-binary hats. I told you to fasten your seatbelts. This is going to be a bumpy ride because it's the mother of all talk shows.